Weather Audio Broadcast Network, weatheraudio.net, hurricanecity.com.
Presents Weather and the Media with your host, Jim Williams.
I'll look the storm right in the eye. Wonder if I will survive. People think that I'm insane because I stand out in the rain. I wonder what tomorrow brings. I wonder what tomorrow.
How do you manage to stay on the air at that station when the other channels got knocked off the air? And is your current station prepared to do the same?
Well, we were very lucky. On television, we were transmitting on a condemned tower.
You miss being the director?
It was fun, but the bureaucracy is just maddening.
Welcome to the wonderful world of high technology.
Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome to yet another edition of the Weather and the Media Show. I'm your host, as usual, Jim Williams, and the date is May 1st at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Our guest tonight is going to be James Spann, ABC 3340 meteorologist from Birmingham, Alabama, and he'll be joining us in about 10 minutes. I want to go over some things tonight. I have Bill Phillips on the phone. He's going to co-host the show tonight. Bill, thanks for joining us. Good evening, Bill.
Good evening, Jim. I look forward to a good show. Tell us about some of the possible new additions and what we're working on with at Hurricane City.
All right, we've been very busy over the last couple of months. We got a lot of projects going on right now. First of all, Chris from Tropical Atlantic, I want to thank him a lot. He's been working on a new script for the Hurricane City tracking maps. What these maps are going to do is it's going to allow you to see the 5 best performing models on the tracking map at Hurricane City. So when there's a new name system, the first 24 hours, all you're going to see is the LBAR and the BAM model, the medium range BAM model. And then after about 24 hours, we're going to start showing you the 5 best performing model of all the models, the globals. The only model, with the only exception being the ECMWF, the European model, that will not be able to be displayed on the map. But Chris is working hard on that, and that's going to be available. Now, it won't be available right away. We got to wait for maybe the first storm of the season to see how this thing responds and see how everything works. And then if it works good and everything performs, we'll have it on the front page of Hurricane City. So if you need to know where that storm is going to go, where that hurricane is going to go to hurricanecity.com. The 5 best performing models will be displayed on that map, and those will be updated every 6 hours. So you'll know what models are going to look what models are performing the best on the forecast track. And of course the National Hurricane Center, that's the way they do it down there. They look at all the models and they pick the best performers, and then they make their cone of error based on that. So we're also going to try to have the cone of error embedded in the map as well, but there's going to be a lot of bugs to work out on this, so it may not be available till maybe even the second or the third named storm of the season if we have to make any adjustments. But that's the first thing we're working on. The second thing we're working on is a remote surveillance system. I'm not going to say much more than that. Bill and I have talked about not really spilling the beans on this at this time because this is kind of, I don't want to say top secret or anything, but this device is going to be so small, I could literally stick it up my shirt here. That's how small this box is going to be for remote surveillance. It's going to be broadband enabled, video camera with sound and everything that we can stick in the storm. Now, I know Mark Sudduth at HurricaneTrack.com already does this, but what makes this different is first of all, it's got sound on it, and it's so small and compact. Bill, I don't know if I even told you this before you came on the show tonight, that battery that I'm testing right now, it's over 24 hours and it's still at 100%. So
You're kidding me.
No, it's still at 100% on both batteries. Just about. I think the Energizer is at about 75%, and the Elevate is at 100%. So I think we're going to be able to get 36, 48 hours on that camera, and so this is what's in the works, and it's a really great idea. Waterproof casing. We can strap it real close in the storm surge zone, and we even have some people that we'll be able to ship it to in different parts of the country that'll be able to set it up on the beach. So we'll all be able to watch this together on the Hurricane Warning Show when these hurricanes are making landfall. And of course, I'll be out there mobily as well in the storm, covering it, and Bill will be back at the headquarters doing the broadcast and showing everybody all the different cam shots and images, and I'll be on the road if it's in the southeast. If it's in the mid-Atlantic or the northern Gulf or the northeast, I'll be here in the studio doing the hurricane warning show, as well as the Caribbean, or Bill will be covering the Caribbean as well. We'll work on that. Bill is going to college. Go ahead.
I said we'll tag team it. We got you covered here at HC.
And here enters my executive producer, Bonzo, here at the bottom of the screen. I don't know if you can see him, but he'll be in and out all night knocking things. He may even knock the camera over. The normal executive producers that are always wandering around behind me, they're not in here at the moment, so luckily things are status quo. Because the doors are open, they can come and go, so hopefully nothing will get destroyed in here during the show.
They can't knock over the elevator or anything like they were trying to do the other day, can they?
No. Well, no. I got everything tucked kind of back in the corner over here, so they can't knock anything over. Bonzo can only trip over wires on the ground, so hopefully he'll. I just hope he doesn't hit the camera on the way in and out of here every 5 minutes. All right. Some other things real quickly here, because we got a lot of stuff to go over. We have a new page set up for the archive subscribers. Use the drop-down menu at Hurricane City under products, I believe it is. No, it's multimedia. The multimedia tab on the front page of Hurricane City. Just click on multimedia. The drop-down menu, you will see the archives page with all the video archives from all the shows we've done in history, all the hurricanes, going all the way back to the early 2000s, I think. Even some back in the 1990s, I think, are on that. But I'm continuing to add some of the older files. And keep checking back to the page, the archives page, in the drop-down menu under multimedia. And you can use your username and password that you were given when you signed up for the annual subscription, and you can get in and watch all the old shows, including this one. And by the way, the shows that are archived are also looping on the live feed 24 hours a day. So if you can't afford a subscription or you're not a subscriber, if you watch HurricaneCity.tv long enough, you could probably, of course, Bonzo's got to chime in on everything now, but the archives can be watched actually on the live feed. If you watched it for 48 to 72 hours or watched it for a week, actually, you might be able to find one of the shows that you may have missed. WeatherAudio.net, no more, gone. We got rid of WeatherAudio.net. That was the old housing for the archives, and that is now gone because it just got to be too much of a pain in the neck to maintain that domain, and it's better to just have everything at Hurricane City. So WeatherAudio.net, no more. The Hurricane Conference is coming. The Florida Governor's Conference is coming up on May. I'm going to be there on May 16th, 17th, and 18th if my schedule permits. I'm still working on that. But the Florida Governor's Hurricane Conference, if anybody's planning on going to that, I'd love to meet you while I'm there. I may be there on one or all three of those days, or maybe I won't be there at all. I just don't know yet. But I'll look for me there if you're going to be at the Governor's Hurricane Conference, 16th, 17th, and 18th. Tonight, again, we're going to have James Spann on here in a few minutes. I'm going to Skype him any minute now. But the protocol tonight, we welcome all your emails, jim@hurricanecity.com. There's nothing scrolling on the screen, so I'll just have to keep repeating it during the show. But it's jim@hurricanecity.com if you have any comments or questions for James Spann or myself or Bill Phillips or how we're doing anything through the course of the hurricane season. Feel free to email us. And remember, though, that James Spann, he's more of a tornado guy. He's not really a hurricane guy. I mean, we'll talk a little bit about hurricanes, see if he does any of that. But it's primarily tornado talk tonight because of the severe weather we've been having. In fact, it was 2 tornadoes. What was it, yesterday, Bill? 2 tornadoes last night in Oklahoma City? Or somewhere in Oklahoma, not in Oklahoma City.
I think it was like the north side of Oklahoma City. Not Oklahoma City proper, but close.
Right. Yeah, it's been a very violent spring, and I'm sure James is going to have a lot to say about that. We're not taking phone calls tonight. That was another thing we've been working on. There's a new mixing board. See it right here off to my left. And this mixing board has everything coming into it, that all the audio you hear from all the different sources are going to come through this mixing board. And the phone coupler, of course, is up here. That hasn't changed. We're able to take telephone calls. We're using Magic Jack for the phone calls this year. But I don't have the ringer set up for that yet, so we really can't take calls on the Magic Jack yet. But that number will be available throughout the hurricane season for you to contact us if you're having a hurricane hit you or severe weather and you want to call in and give us the information. It'll come through the mixing board here on the Magic Jack, but that's not hooked up right now. So, again, tonight only emails. So we have a bunch of questions for James Spann tonight. I have about maybe a dozen questions. You can email your question, jim@hurricanecity.com. Bill has some questions for James Spann. So, Bill, while I pull James up on the Skype here, because it might take a minute or two to make sure we get him in the Skype and he's able to see what's on the screen and everything, and tell people about kind of what your thoughts are on I know you're going to college right now at Old Dominion, and you explain to people what your challenges are on your schedule with doing the hurricane warning shows and how we're going to coordinate that this year. And let me go ahead and get James Spann on the line.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to do my best to be available when we have a hurricane landfall in the Caribbean or the U.S. But my main focus for the Caribbean will be major hurricanes, and I'm going to try to be available. But my school schedule, I'm basically a full-time college student at Old Dominion, and my school schedule may not permit me to cover every single storm that needs to be done, but I'll do my best to do so, and we'll go from there.
All right, we're still trying to get James Spann on the line, Bill.
I heard him.
I don't have his picture, though. I'm a little bit perplexed over that. James, do you
Try
have...
it again. I heard him.
Let me get the volume. James, are you there?
I'm here.
There we are. All right, James Spann, let me get your screen capture going here.
Let me turn on some lights. I don't know we had video here.
Okay, James, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to get a screen capture going for you so you can see what I'm going to show some people a few things, and I want you to kind of chime in on it. So
okay.
We have some video of you actually calling the tornadoes from last year. And there we go. Let's see. Get you full screen, and then we'll... There we go. And let's go full screen. All right, there we go. Okay, James, thank you for joining me tonight on the Weather and the Media show. You're calling in from where are you located tonight, James?
I would be at the moment in Birmingham, Alabama.
Okay, Birmingham, Alabama. Now, I have my co-host here, Bill Phillips, is on the phone, and he has some questions for you tonight as well. So when we're going to kind of tag team with the questions here tonight, but I have about a dozen questions. Bill has about 4 questions, and this is being recorded as well, so it'll be on the website and on hurricanecity.tv. It'll be looping for years and years. So we want to try to keep it about what's potential, what's going on in the future, what can happen in the future, and we're also going to try not to talk too much about what's going on at the moment because it won't mean anything to anybody, a year from now. So I hope you understand the kind of questions we're going to ask tonight.
Okay, sure.
All right. Well, my first question, I always ask this of every weather person I have on the show, and that is how and when did you get interested in the weather?
I guess I was born with the fascination with thunderstorms. I think a lot of people are similar to me that do this for a living. A lot of children are afraid of storms. They have a fear, but I just love them. I love thunder. I love lightning. I love the rain. I love the way the sky looked. I had so many questions, and I wanted to learn, and I got a book about clouds in first grade, and I think that really started me on the journey that I'm still on today. So I was just born with it, and, of course, growing up in this particular state, we have more than our share of thunderstorms, and there's a tremendous diversity here. In the winter, we actually have some pretty decent winter events with snow and ice, and we have tropical action in the summer. We have the severe storms and tornadoes. We have floods. So I just got hooked on it at a very young age, and then in the 70s, when I was older, I call myself a child of the 70s. That's really what turned me on to this. I guess I'm a child of the super outbreak. That was April 3rd and 4th, 1974. I was a senior in high school, and they allowed me to take off 3 days from school to volunteer. So I took my ham radio gear and went to some of the hardest hit areas. And really that event was one in which I kind of lost my innocence, and that's when you realize that this is serious business, and that pretty much got me into it today.
All right, now, so where did you go from there? Tell us about where did you go to college, and how did you get educated in this, and what got you where you are right now?
My first major, I was an electrical engineering student at the University of Alabama. Nobody told me that meteorology was a viable career option back then, so I was in engineering, and at the time I was working at a radio station, working my way through college, and the local television station called because they had heard me do weather during a lot of those historic 70s outbreaks on the radio, and they gave me a chance to do the weather on the local television station. This was in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, which is a small television market, and that really got me hooked. And about that time, that's when Mississippi State offered their geoscience program through distance learning, which means, you could work while going to school. So I transferred to Mississippi State and wound up finishing in their program, which was brand new at the time. So I'm an old engineer turned meteorologist, and I have been on the air since 1978. So I'm old as dirt.
Wow. Okay. And so now, and what's Weather Brains? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I think all of us, we need a creative outlet. When you do, weather on television and on the web, it's very structured. And we started that program 6 years ago just as a creative outlet, just to talk about weather and bring on people that we know. And I'll be honest with you, we never thought that would last more than a few months, but it's been a 6-year-plus running program, and it's kind of reached critical mass. The numbers are shockingly large for people that listen to it, and we just love doing it. We've been doing it weekly for over 6 years, about 6.5 years, and we probably had most of the really big names in weather in the field of research and operational meteorology and the academic world, broadcast, weather service. It's been a great ride, and we're going to keep on going. We're just having more fun now than ever. We had Chuck Doswell was the guest on our show the week we're recording this, and he's always a piece of work. He'll light it up. Yeah.
So how can people find Weather Brains?
Well, we actually stream it live. We produce it Monday nights at 8:30 Central, 9:30 Eastern, and we have a brave group that listens to it live on Ustream. But most people listen to the produced version later, and it's on. You can get it on iTunes or Stitcher or any of the podcasting apps, or listen to it on the web. But just go to weatherbrains.com, and it's all over there.
Okay, great. Now, is that your home studio there, or are you at work, or where are you right now?
I am in my luxurious office here at the television station. If you've ever watched the Weather Brains feed, this room would look familiar. This is the same room. It's basically a closet. We used to work in the studio, which is right across the hall over here. But now we are producing so much local news that they're always on the air in there, and I'm always on the air. So I found this little closet over here, and I moved in about 2 years ago. And people laugh and they make fun of my little room here, but I think it's great. We do all of the radio work in here. We do 27 commercial radio stations, weather. We do Weather Brains in here. We do all the internet videos in here. We have a digital weather channel. We do those videos in here. So this is where a lot of the media content is done, away from the standard television newscast.
Well, that is some pretty fancy equipment there. That's a pretty neat-looking microphone you got in front of there. That's a far cry from my wireless Radio Shack mic I'm using right now. But
hey, man, this is the mighty Bob Heil PR40. I've known Bob for a long time. I used to use Bob's mics when I was in ham radio, and I'm still in ham radio. But this is the same type mic that Leo Laporte uses for This Week in Tech, and it's the only mic that actually makes me sound somewhat decent. So I love this PR40.
All right, we're gonna put a little challenge to you at the moment because Bill has some questions here, and we're doing this the old-fashioned way, sticking a mic up to a speaker. So hopefully you can hear him okay. Go ahead, Bill.
James, can you hear me before I give you my first question?
Yes, I think I can make you out. Go ahead, Bill.
Going back to the tornado outbreak of last year, was there any radar reanalysis done of your radar presentation had a 0 to 10-point scale for tornado indication, and it was registering 16 and 17 numbers. Was that correct? You even said on air you didn't think that scale went that high. Did you do any reanalysis for that?
Yeah, Bill, I think you're asking about the significant tornado parameter, the STP. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. I got. And yeah, we're talking about the outbreak we had here in our state on April 27th, 2011.
Correct.
We work with that STP a lot. That is kind of the standard within the science. I'm not a big fan of what they're doing at the Weather Channel. They have that thing called Torcon, and I'm a big believer that we should standardize things so that we don't have mass confusion. If everybody had their own severe weather index, one guy would have a 6, one guy would have an 8, one guy would have a 3. So
right.
I think that SIGTOR should be used by everybody. And initially, I thought that the NSSL guys, when they came up with that, it maxed at 10. And as it turns out, it doesn't. That was just my fault. It can actually exceed 10. But understand, anything over a 2 is very significant. So when you start seeing 5s and 6s and 7s on an STP, that's rare. And on April 24th of 2011, the thing exceeded 10. But I did learn that it can exceed 10, and it did that day. And certainly for those that are not aware of that outbreak, on that single day, this was a 24-hour period, we had 62 tornadoes in this state, and the death toll was 252. So I guess the screaming message there, if you've got an STP that hits 10 or higher, you better get serious.
Yeah.
You had another question?
I do. How much involvement do you have personally putting your the storm chasers that we see on air? How much analysis do you do before you send them out into the field? What's an average day for you? Let's use April 27th as an example, as you were sending people out.
Yeah, that was that was one of those historic days where I don't think I'll have another one like that in my career. I'm 55 years old, and for me that's probably the last one. But on that day, I thought some of the real heroes were those men in the field that were able to provide live streams of those violent wedge tornadoes. Radar is a great tool. It's not a panacea. As you guys know, often what you're looking at a mesocyclone 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 feet off the ground at a great distance from the radar. So having live streams of these storms is crucial. And I'll be quite frank with you guys, it's not easy to do here. Alabama is not a state where you really chase storms because of the trees we have. We have pine trees everywhere. We have terrain. The foothills of the Appalachians are here. And many of our tornadoes are totally rain wrapped. These are HP, heavy precipitation storms that don't look like the ones in the Great Plains. And on top of all of that, many of our tornadoes happen at night. But on the day of the 27th, we had excellent streams from our guys. And these are guys that obviously they don't make money. They lose money when they go out, because of the high gasoline prices. But I think John Olshoe and Ben Greer, these were two men that were southwest of Tuscaloosa that provided a live stream of an EF4 that came up into that very populated city. I think they saved a lot of people's lives, because we have learned that people can look at radar all day, even if you've got the most remarkable hook echo, velocity couplet, all the stuff that in science we understand. People look at that and they see a bucket of spilled paint. It doesn't mean anything to them, even if we clearly state what it is. But if you can show them a live stream of a large wedge tornado like that, they'll do something. And John and Ben were able to do that almost 50 minutes before it got into downtown Tuscaloosa. 52 people died in that city, but I think the death toll would have been much, much higher without those guys. So we coordinate greatly with them, of course. We all do it on a live chat session, and they're the best. Our people here have to be good because it is so hard here.
Well, now, James, with that said about the chasers, have you seen the story by NPR about the storm chasers blocking the roads up in the latest up in Kansas? I guess there was a big tornado on the ground, and all the storm chasers were lined up all the way down the street, blocking like half the road. And then there was one chaser that was skipping through traffic, weaving in and out of cars to get to the front of the line or get to wherever he was trying to go. And the story was kind of leaning towards, whether they should write tickets to people for chasing and blocking the roads. You have any opinion on that?
Well, it's a real problem because there are some people out there in the field that know what they're doing. These are men and women that have been trained for years and years, and they're excellent. They understand storm structure. They are in a safe place. They're not putting their lives in danger, and they know the proper etiquette, how to do it safely in regard to traffic. Then you got these boneheads that want to go out there and make these YouTube videos, and they have no idea what they're doing. They don't understand the science. They're just out there. Their vision is to get a video that's going to go viral on YouTube. They put on Google AdSense, and they think they're going to make some money.
Right.
They're not going to make any money doing that. They might make $30 or something. But what they're doing, well, first off, they're going to get themselves killed one of these days. We had a lot of that in Tuscaloosa, in our state last year. And they put the lives of other in danger because, they're parked in the middle of the road. They'll go to crazy lengths to get this video. So it's a problem. And I have no trouble with law enforcement enforcing traffic laws. If there's somebody stopped in the middle of a road, they ought to be fined and ticketed and hauled away because those are the dangerous ones. And those are not the professionals. Those are not the guys that know what they're doing. And I'd say that probably 80% of the people in the Great Plains in this last event were just these knuckleheads that had no clue on what they're doing.
Right. Well, they're excited. They're into the storm. A lot of these kids are students. They're either in college or graduated college, and they've been studying these storms, and they get to see them up close. And it just seems like it's a growing phenomenon. More and more chasers are out on the road. And now when it comes to hurricanes, that's what we mainly do at Hurricane City is cover the hurricanes. And even then, there's chasers getting out into hurricanes now. But then again, there's not all the traffic out there in the middle of hurricanes, so it's not the same situation, but the chasing phenomenon is really growing, and I'm just going to be curious if something ever ends up getting done legislatively that it's going to cause people to either at the very least get tickets or it's going to be interesting to see what happens down the road with that.
I don't think there's an easy solution with the government. It will kind of take care of itself because what's going to happen? Somebody's going to get killed. And you know what? That's going to turn a lot of people off, and that's going to let a lot of people know they got no business being out there. So just the natural order of things will probably take care of that in due time.
Well, now, speaking of getting excited, I know you have to be somewhat excited when you see that there's a high risk of tornadoes for your area, or you get nervous maybe. I don't know. When there's a high tornado threat, are you have us go through your game plan when you wake up in the morning, or maybe the day before. Maybe you take a little extra time shaving your face before you go to work or something. I don't know. I mean, do you really get amped up when there's a tornado threat?
Well, if you don't, you got no business being in this business.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like why we're here. I think we all get an adrenaline rush, and I think that's a necessary thing. I think that's the human body preparing itself for doing some, remarkable hours and some very stressful work. Without that adrenaline rush, I don't know if I could make it because, my normal days are bad enough. I start in the morning before 5 o'clock and get home at midnight due to the radio work and the internet work and social media. It just never stops. But on a day like that, on those, red letter days, you have to be really sharp. You can't get too excited. You need to be forceful. And the one thing that we've learned, we're not as good as we think we are. A lot of us old timers, we think we've been doing this forever and we know everything. The truth is there's a lot we don't know. Humility is missing. And for me, on that day, on April 27, 2011, 252 people died on my watch. And I've been here longer than anybody else. We have a huge audience when we do severe weather coverage, and I was shocked. So, what we have done now, we have gotten social scientists to help us. We're weather people. We don't understand human behavior. In fact, most of us are anomalies. We're weird. So we want to know, was my facial expression okay? What was the tone of voice okay? What can we do to better effectively communicate this threat to people? But, on days like that, I just try and stay calm. And, people can go search, James Spann, YouTube, April 27th, and see all that video has been posted. But
I bet you get a lot of people that come up to you on the street and after a tornado, and they just want to hug you for what you've done on TV. Does that happen a lot?
Or they want to punch you in the nose, one of the two. So, It's amazing. Like after April 27th, the loss of life was horrific. It was our 9/11 here. You won't understand it unless you were here. And I think New Yorkers would say the same thing for 9/11. We can all maybe imagine what it was like, but we don't know. But even after that horrible, horrible day, you had some people just furious because you cut off General Hospital or something. So,
right.
But when you start thinking of yourself as being special, all you have to do is wait into that little folder. I have a folder called Hate Mail, so we get it both. But yeah, there were people that were very appreciative, and we had an anniversary of that here recently, and many stories were shared, and that was very emotional. I think I'm going through male menopause. I cried more that day than I've cried my whole life because there's a lot of things came out, and anyway, we hear good, we hear bad, we hear it all.
Bill, go ahead. I think you have another question I'm going to pull the video up of James Spann doing the coverage on that tornado while you're asking your question here.
James, have you ever had to get into it with, have you ever had an issue with your manager or programming director wanting to cut into programming or wanting to bring in programming for something and say, look, and that manager goes, I don't think so. You're not interrupting, I don't know whether it be the U.S. Open or the NBA playoffs or whatever's on ABC.
I'm probably the most blessed guy in the television weather business. What happened, I was in an established station in this market for a long time. The ABC channel, it was Channel 6, and we had a big affiliation swap in 1996, and the ABC affiliation went to this new channel, the one I work for now, and I left that station that was well established and took a gamble. It was the gamble of my life, professional life, on this new station. But one of the things they gave me was pretty much full control. It's almost like a football coach having full control of the athletic program, which is pretty much unheard of. So that has meant that I have full control. If we have the national championship game on, whether it's the NBA or the BCS, whatever, the Super Bowl, it doesn't matter. If I want to go on television, I will go on television, and everybody from corporate on down, they've never said a word to me. They've only been supportive. So I'm very thankful for that. I know that some people in my business are not that fortunate, but I have been very blessed where that's one thing I don't have to worry about.
All right, James, I have a video I'm going to play here of you calling. I'm not sure if it's the same exact tornado that went through Tuscaloosa, but it may have been one of the ones preceding that. But here you are in action, and you feel free to comment on it. I have the volume level. Maybe you can talk over it and kind of explain to the audience what we're looking at here. Okay,
and the storm that you're looking at, that is southwest of Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And again, if this was from April 27th, that could very well be the one that came up into Tuscaloosa. Yeah, okay. This was April 27th, 2011, because you've got two violent tornadoes that are down. And one of my struggles that day was knowing which one to focus on. I mean, look at the hook you're looking at right there. That is a screamer. That is a screamer. I mean, you know that something horrible is happening there, and you had to bounce between these multiple death-producing violent wedge tornadoes, and that was probably the hardest part of the day. Which one do you focus on? And yes, obviously, when it's coming through a densely populated city like Tuscaloosa, which is a large college city, you got to focus on it. But on the other hand, I don't believe that people that live in rural areas should be discriminated against just because they live out in the country. So we did our best to focus not only on the city tornadoes, but also the ones that were out in the country. And our EF5s that day were in fairly rural areas. One of the EF5s at a small town called Hackleburg, which probably has a population of 2,000. And that thing was just unbelievable. And just because you live in that town, doesn't mean that you don't need to know about it. So that was, I think, the hardest part for me was bouncing back and forth. But the one thing I think that's very important for television people, I believe you have to be on camera. And if you guys notice, I stay on that key wall all the time.
Yeah.
And the reason I do that is because we have learned that if you can make eye contact with your viewing audience, it really does make a difference. And we've seen some of the initial social media research that's come out of this event, and we now know that is indeed true. the easiest thing in the world is for a weather person on television to get behind the equipment where you're working the telestrator and you're working all of this stuff. And, you're not making eye contact. In fact, even as I, am talking to you guys, I'm watching some severe weather coverage in the Midwest, and I'm just not seeing them on camera. So being on camera is a very, very important thing. And I've got a computer in front of me with everything I need. I've got all the Weather Service chats. I've got our chats with the spotters in the field. And I could even control the computer equipment in the weather office if I needed to with that thing. So I'm a big believer in that.
That's really good. Bill and I, we love watching you do that tornado coverage up there because it's really Bill. Maybe you can chime in on this. I think he's the best, if not, better or the best of anybody I've seen doing tornado coverage. The other guy that comes to mind is out in Oklahoma, Gary England, and there have been some other guys that are pretty good at tornado. But your delivery is so smooth and so convincing, and you're calm, and it really is a phenomenal job you do there.
Well, you're way too kind to say that. I mean, I have no training in television. I'm an engineer/meteorologist guy, and what I've tried to do is just copy people that are good. And the other thing I think is important is to understand your market. All right, there you see that stream right there. That's the one I was referring to. That's John Olshu and Ben Greer.
Right.
That's that large wedge tornado about 40 miles southwest of the city of Tuscaloosa. And I know because I've heard people tell me, including a lot of younger people, that looking at that forced them to doing something. And that's very important. But, back to the coverage thing, there's no right and there's no wrong. And I think the other thing that people need to know is the culture of the people that are watching them in their market. Every market is different. How Gary does his thing in Oklahoma City and how I do my thing in Birmingham. I think the reason we've had some success, we just understand the people we're talking to. We've been around for a long time, and, a lot of these younger guys, they just bounce around from market to market. And I know that you do that as you work your way up the ladder, but I think at some point all meteorologists need to settle down and kind of get into a market and stay there so they can understand the geography, understand the culture, understand the people. And when you do that, it gives you a very good idea of the demeanor that you need to use on television when you've got a day like this, because this was just overwhelming to see that. And Reed Timmer was on that one over in Mississippi. And, of course, we watched some of his stuff. And then as it got into our network and our guys, it was like bullets from the pit of hell that day.
It's always good. It is good to have a camera out there so you can actually see what's going on. I also like the tower cams that a lot of these TV stations have, too. They're scanning the horizon, and you can see anything coming at you.
Yeah, that's very important. And again, we just know that radar, for us in the science, absolutely, it's crucial. But if you can actually show people a live look at a tornado through a camera, that's a big deal. So we made a pretty big investment. And it's not a huge investment with Internet technology. You can put cameras almost everywhere. And we're in the process of doing that. And all of those cameras have a Davis Vantage 2 weather station with them. So you get the weather data, you get the live streams back. And we had a tornado that day in Cullman, Alabama, and I think that was on camera for 19 minutes. And that was a case where it worked beautifully. Nobody was killed in the city. That was a big EF4. Right. But, yeah, the cameras are a big deal. Everybody needs those, and you don't have to spend a whole lot of money on them.
All right, James, we got some emails coming in here for you. Bobby wants to know, Bobby Coleman sent an email in here and asked, did you know that the outbreak of 2011, did you see it coming ahead of time?
I think we all saw it coming, but I don't think anybody, or at least I didn't have any earthly idea we're going to have 62 tornadoes and a death toll of over 252. That is just that's stunning. I had no idea. And really, I tell people this all the time. You can see all the synoptic indicators for a major tornado outbreak days in advance. And that was identified readily by the Storm Prediction Center, by the local guys here. But you really never know about the mesoscale features that really determine the severity of these things until really the night before. LCL heights are a big deal to me. We watch that like a hawk. When you got an LCL height over 1,000 meters, you rarely ever have big tornadoes. If it's under 1,000 meters, you can have a day just like that. And the LCL heights were amazingly low that day. 0 to 1 kilometer shear values were way in excess of 45. In fact, they were in excess of 50 knots that day. Little things we look at, and that's the small scale stuff that you can't see on synoptic models days in advance. But yeah, we knew it was going to be a bad day. But I'll say this one more thing. The one thing we didn't know was the morning event. You're seeing that video of the afternoon tornadoes, but the morning event was not forecast well by numerical weather prediction techniques. And the morning event killed 5 people, and it knocked out power to 250,000 people. And the short-term warnings were good, but 12 hours in advance, we didn't see that morning MCS coming. And again, I've charged the researchers to find out why. Why did the guidance fail us? We got to fix that. There's a lot of things we have to fix and a lot of things we have to learn from this.
All right, we got another email in here from Fred, and he's saying that during the outbreaks of this year on March 19th, station KENS 5 in San Antonio was reporting live during a tornado and told its listeners to go out and get pictures and videos of the tornadoes, telling them to send them to the TV station. They encouraged their viewers to go out and take photos and send them to us. Fred says he found this to be ridiculous. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, obviously I didn't see that, but if that's the case, that's not proper. In fact, it's dangerous. I'd like to think that nobody would do that, because if you send out people that are not trained, they ought to be in a safe place. That they have no business being on the road. A car is the worst possible place to be, or standing outdoors. So that would be some horrible advice. We would never consider saying that. Our advice is that you've got to be in a safe place right now. And nobody should be out there. And the one thing we always stress, that like these guys that are providing these live streams, they've been trained for years. John Olshu and Ben Greer, John's a professional meteorologist, and Ben has been trained for years, as did John Brown and Mike Wilhelm, the guys that were right close to this thing, because you're going to get yourself killed. That's a horrible
James,
advice.
Real quick, that video that's up on the screen right now, that tornado, what do you think? What is that hook coming out of the side of that thing? Is that another tornado trying to spin off of that?
That has been looked at so much. The answer is I don't know. We don't know. We got objects falling out of this thing. We've got these other low-hanging appendages. The one thing we did notice that seemed to be pretty common in most of the violent tornadoes that day were these horizontal vortices. And over the years, I've noticed that you only see those horizontal vortices during really, really violent tornado outbreaks. And again, I think that's related to that 0 to 1 kilometer shear being over 45 knots. But what that low-hanging appendage was, nobody really knows for sure. The researchers are going through these videos frame by frame, and we understand it takes 2 years to really get a lot of data back and to get the hard facts back. But we'll know, again, a lot more in about a year than what we know right now. There were some objects flying out of that thing. We don't know what it is to this day, and again, the researchers are looking at that. We think one was a large tree. We think one was a large vehicle, whether it was a van or a minibus or something like that. But some of this stuff was just way too creepy.
Well, that was one of my. I just want to ask this, and Bill, I know you probably have another question here. I just wanted to, because he just mentioned something about things flying around in tornadoes, and I wanted to ask this question. Is it true there was an offensive lineman from the University of Alabama that was hurled like 100 yards or something? And is that true?
Yes. It was a horrible, horrible story. He was actually the long snapper. When they come in for punts, he's the guy that would do the snapping for punts. His name is Carson Tinker. Carson and his girlfriend were thrown about the length of a football field. The girlfriend, whose name is Ashley Harrison, she passed away in a very violent way. And again, the way that many of our people died here, it's so graphic. I'd prefer not to speak about it just out of respect to those people that died. But she died while aloft. He survived, came down, and is recovered. And he did play for the football team this past year. But he struggles with, why did my girlfriend have to die and why did I live? And that is a very common thing for people. But there were 6 University of Alabama students that were killed in that. There was the 1-year anniversary brought a very moving ceremony in Tuscaloosa. But yeah, it's Carson Tinker. He's the long snapper for the University of Alabama.
All right, so that's true. That is true. And they also mentioned that there's like DNA that I've heard this from some storm chasers. I don't know if this is true either. Like that, there's DNA that some people's bodies actually get ripped apart in these tornadoes, and they find the same DNA in different locations in these tornadoes. Have you heard that before?
Yes, that is true. And again, just what happens, and just oddly enough, one of my jobs here to put back into the community, I am the chairman of the board of a major hospital here, which makes no sense for a meteorologist, but this market has been so good to me, and I've tried to put something back into it. And I took that job on because we're moving this large hospital, this beautiful new facility, and I just believe in the project. But having said that, I am around the medical community a lot, so I talk with a lot of docs, including the ER docs. And what's so sad, so many of these people, like in outbreaks like that, they die while they are aloft. The shrapnel within the tornado will cause the fatal wounds while a person is in the air. And often those wounds are very, very harsh and graphic, and the person that dies aloft, often they don't come down basically in one piece. And I don't want to go much farther than that, but so you can have a part of a body here and maybe a part of a body a long, long way away. It is a horrible, horrible situation. But many of those 252 lost their life in that way that day, and it was just rough.
That's tough. All right, Bill, go ahead. I think you have another question.
Do we know why is it Alabama? It seems like a lot of your tornadoes are at night. I know April 27th you had a lot of daytime events, but when I think Alabama tornadoes, I've seen them at night a lot. Is there something that goes on atmospherically that we don't see because it's so close to the Gulf, or what goes on with that aspect of tornadoes with the state of Alabama?
My answer to that, often the low-level jet, which you can identify at 850 millibars, or about 5,000 feet, that tends to be nocturnal here in the Gulf Coast region, and that enhanced low-level jet can create some very violent weather late at night. We had an event here in January of the year we're doing this interview, and this was just a few months ago, in which we had 2 fatalities and 2 EF3 tornadoes here within the Birmingham metro. And that was one of those classic after midnight, pre-dawn severe weather outbreaks. And it has a lot to do with the strengthening nocturnal low-level jet that you don't see all the time in the Great Plains.
Okay. All right. Again, that email address, jim@hurricanecity.com, for questions for James Spann. James, this is the ultimate debatable subject that's widely debated amongst scientists, and this is the global warming issue. Do you believe that we're seeing more tornadoes in response to global warming? And what are your thoughts overall on global warming as far as overall the planet and global warming in and of itself?
On Weather Brains, we have a buzzer we bring out every time somebody mentions this. We always hit the buzzer, and we don't talk about it, because what that subject does, it polarizes the weather professionals. It really does. There are some people that feel very strongly on both sides of that, and as you guys know, it's so political and it just gets nasty. I mean, I have really backed off on talking about that, because after what happened here, I know that we have a lot of work to do on making the warning process better. So I have deferred people that ask that question to the state climatologist here. His name is Dr. John Christie, and John and I feel the same way about it. But you're asking, are we getting more and more tornadoes? And the clear answer is no. Greg Carbon is the WCM, the Warning Coordination Meteorologist at the Storm Prediction Center in Norman. And Greg has stated publicly over and over and over, there is no increase in the number of tornadoes on a long-term basis since 1950, when good weather records started. Part of the deal is that we just know about them now. With the internet, with the 24-hour news cycle, with all of these chaser channels, you just see them, and it seems like they're happening all the time. But again, I'm a child of the 70s, and I lived through the most 6 hellacious tornado seasons you could ever imagine in 73, 74, 75, 76, and 77 here. And if we had the technology we have now back then, you'd think the world was ending. But again, I think that question is better suited to a Greg Carbon that is a statistician with SPC. But if he were here, he would say absolutely not. There is no increase in the number of tornadoes. We just know more about them now.
Well, see, that's kind of contrary to the National Hurricane Center with the hurricanes. Now, the National Weather Service has pretty much come out and said, yes, that global warming is going to have an impact on hurricanes in some sort of, either there may be more of them or there may be more intense hurricanes when the situation is right, and that so they've made public statements to support that. So I guess that it's a legitimate question to ask, is there more tornadoes as a result of that as well, because the National Weather Service has pretty much come out and said that it's going to affect hurricane seasons.
Yeah, and I'm not a tropical expert like you guys. I stay out of that. But again, even within that, you listen to guys like Chris Lancy from the Hurricane Center, who will have a polar opposite opinion from another guy. And again, that whole thing is just so polarizing. But my position is climate is a long-term thing over a long time. I deal with weather. I am a weather guy. I deal with weather. And, with this, what people have to remember, just, because you're hearing so much, that doesn't mean that we actually have more. But the thing that bothers me is that death toll. I'm telling you guys, I am heartbroken to this day that many people died. Across the region here, in my region, the death toll that day was over 300. April 27th of 2011.
That's a lot of people.
And I just thought that in this day and age, with the technology, with the warnings, with the lead time, using social media to reach those that don't watch traditional television in a very effective way, we would never, ever, ever have that. And I thought the death toll that day should have been about 30. We could identify 30 cases where people had no hope. Unless they were in an underground bunker, they weren't going to survive. But for about 222 of those, we found small rooms nearby, and they could have gotten there. So we're really trying to find out, why did these people die? And once we get the information back, we'll be better. And in some cases, people just don't do it. Some people don't take personal responsibility over anything. And I would assume that you have that problem in hurricane country where they just won't evacuate. When here, they just won't do anything. But I think that's a fairly small number. So, we're going to study that. And that's what my energy is focused on, is to getting that loss of life a lot lower.
Well, you can only do what you can do. You do the best job you can. And if they don't listen, I know it must bother you. You might take it home with you from time. I was going to ask you if you take this work home with you at time. If your family, if you vent, or you maybe shed a tear after these kinds of things. What happens there?
Yeah, look, I take it home. You shouldn't, but you just have to. I think the first, for me, reaction was guilt, as though I had done something wrong after that. And it was really good having Chuck Doswell with me. I respect Chuck so much. What's funny, we are opposite in so many ways, but really good friends. And I grew up reading Chuck Doswell's papers on severe convective storms. He basically is one of the reasons I'm here today. But, he came on our show and he said, hey, there's nothing else you could have done.
Right.
Can we make the warning process better? Yes. But, yeah, I guess I'm going through male menopause, but I probably cried more in the last year than I've cried my whole life.
Right. I can understand
over this whole thing. And these people were precious people that died. These were moms and dads and little boys and little girls and college students and grandmoms and granddads. And, you think that you did an adequate job. And the average lead time was about 30 minutes for those tornadoes. And we did extensive use. I'm a social media geek, as you probably know, and a lot of the college students never watch television news. They have no use for this, but yet we can reach them through Facebook and Twitter and apps on phones. And I'm very, very clear to my folks here, and they've done a great job with it, that I want our video platform to be on every device, whether it's an Android phone, an iPhone, an iPad, a computer with flash, without flash. It's got to be universal. Right. And a lot of college students were able to watch that day on their phones. So I know that we reached some through social media, but some we didn't. But what's funny, I think a lot of the college students, like in Tuscaloosa at the University of Alabama, they have no idea I do the weather on television. They just follow me on Twitter as Spann. they probably don't even know that I'm on television, but
Right.
they just know I do weather over there. So
Yeah.
it's a very important platform that we cannot ignore.
Oh, yeah, social networking is huge. Bill, you got another question there?
I do. Preliminarily, what has the social scientist told you about, if anything, about maybe those 222 deaths that might have been preventable?
Yeah, the question about social scientists and those deaths, we're getting the initial research back, and I firmly believe that one of the problems, it's our problem, it's the false alarm ratio. We've got to work on fixing that. The false alarm ratio, in my opinion, it's out of control, and we're starting to see evidence from the social science studies that there's validity to that. The FAR in my market in Birmingham is approximately 81%, which means that 80% of all tornado warnings don't verify. And, you hear warning after warning after warning after warning, and nothing ever happens. And it just becomes natural not to do anything. It's the cry wolf syndrome. And what the problem, it's these little small spin-up tornadoes within a squall line, these QLCS tornadoes. And I'm not faulting the Weather Service. They're doing what they're mandated to do. They are told by the government to warn for every tornado. And it's my position, we're not that good. Most of these EF0 and EF1 tornadoes last for maybe 2 or 3 minutes, and they're gone. And we're not that good at identifying them on radar within a squall line. By the time you come out with a warning, they're gone. And I think we just need to quit trying to do that, and let's focus on these big ones that are the ones that are killing all these people, and be sure that we get that message out. So,
Right.
and I think we all going to work together within the weather enterprise to reduce the false alarm ratio while keeping the probability of detection very high, which is where it is now.
Is there a different type of warning than you would like to see for QCS, or would you just like to see it remain under the severe thunderstorm warning along those lines? How would you warn for a QCS event? Did you have straight line winds?
It's my opinion that we ought to use severe thunderstorm warnings, because the truth is that most squall lines, the biggest issue is damaging straight line winds anyway. Right. So we think the proper way to do it is to handle it with severe thunderstorm warnings and clearly state within the text of the message, there could be a small tornado that might get down for a minute or two. That's very possible. And, but we're just not good enough to tell you when it's going to happen and when they're going to lift. So you blanket it with severe thunderstorm warnings and just mention within the text of the warning that a small spin-up tornado is possible, and not issue a tornado warning, because we're a very aggressive market here. And when a tornado warning is issued, even for those for a QLCS EF0, it's going to force us on television for 45 minutes, where odds are that tornado lasted for maybe 30 seconds. And and if they see us on TV over and over and over and nothing's happening, again, it's going to dull their senses, and it's going to bring on apathy and complacency. So the more the Weather Service can keep that finger off that tornado warning trigger, I think the better off we'll be. And we just need to focus on these, really serious situations like we had April 27th.
Agreed.
Bill,
do you have any more questions?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. I think it's been a pleasure being able to talk with you and James, and thank you for your time.
All right.
Hey, Bill, it's my pleasure. Thank you guys for letting me come on the show here. I'm honored to be here.
Well, we got just a couple more questions that came in an email. If you want to go ahead and try to take these, James.
Sorry, James.
Yeah, sure.
Derek emailed, and he says he's studying to become a meteorologist right now. He's going to college, or he's going to be going to college soon, but he's struggling so much with the math. And he wants to know, how did you get through the math to become a meteorologist?
Oddly enough, that was really the only thing where I was really good in school. I was a horrible writer, and I hate that, because what's so funny, here I am today, and so much of what I do in a normal day, it's writing weather discussions on the Internet, and I just missed it. But for some reason, I was just born. It came pretty easy to me. Again, I was an engineer, initially for 3 years in college, and that takes you all the way through, the calculus and the differentials and all of that. And I think different people are wired in different ways. I was just blessed because it came fairly easy for me. I didn't have to struggle with that. My main struggle is this television stuff. It creeps me out. I don't. I mean, to this day, I walk in that studio next door, and it's just like, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing or the wrong thing over there. But for the math, it's like anything else. If you work hard enough and try and find out applications in a real-world sense, it'll start to make sense. And what really helped me was, and again, I'm not trying to promote my buddy Chuck, but when I read his papers way back in the early 80s, Severe Convective Storms, Chuck Doswell, all these papers, and he had the differentials within those papers, and you could really see where he was going. It was making good sense. So, digging around through some of these preprints of these AMS severe weather conferences, I think that'll help, is applying that math in a real-world way.
So you would suggest maybe for him to try to go to some of these conferences and whatnot, try to learn stuff there, or
and if you can't go to the conferences, you can buy the big books with all the papers in there, and these are peer-reviewed papers that are very good. And again, I would look at those legendary severe weather guys like Harold Brooks, Chuck Doswell, Alan Moeller. These are the guys that taught me most of what I know, and they're still the best today. I saw Harold Brooks at a function here in Birmingham last week. So, yeah, you can buy those, and they're very inexpensive from the AMS, and that would help a lot.
All right, James, I have one more question for you that is at the bottom of my question list, and this is another controversial subject. Now, I don't know up in your area if you have this problem or not, but down here in South Florida, we have what are called the morning honeys, the really attractive-looking women that get on there and do the weather in the morning, and it seems like it's turning into more of a fashion show than it is about meteorology. What are your thoughts on the visual of what people are looking for on television versus the knowledge in someone's head? I mean, I'm not saying that these women aren't knowledgeable. I'm just saying that it seems like you have to be really good-looking now to be on television.
And obviously I break the rule on that deal. I'm some old guy with no hair, so I'm totally out of the mold on that. But, I know what you mean. I see, especially some of these ladies, and I'm sure they're wonderfully nice people, but I see them on these national cable networks, and they do weather, and they say things that are so outrageously wrong. It's just you want to bang your head against a wall. But having said that, there are some that are brilliant. And I guess the example that comes to my mind, there is a meteorologist now working for ABC television in New York. Her name is Ginger Z. Ginger is the weekend meteorologist for Good Morning America, and she reports during the week for World News Tonight when she's working. And let me tell you what, she looped through here, and of course, I know her better than most, but she was an intern here 10 years ago. She was a student at Valparaiso University, and her academics were impeccable. She's brilliant. And yes, she's very attractive, but she's up there changing the culture at ABC because, again, those people don't understand weather. They don't understand hurricanes and tornadoes. That's not their culture. But she's helping to straighten it out. So I guess my point is not all of them are, not appropriately educated. Some are pretty good, and she's one good example.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I guess that about wraps it up tonight, James. Thank you very much for coming on the show tonight. You're a legend in the business, whether you know it or not. Keep doing what you're doing, and don't let that studio get to you. Just go in there and keep saving lives. I know you don't think you did, but I know you saved a ton of lives out there last year, and you'll continue to do so. So we wish you the best of luck. Keep up the great work.
Okay, guys. Thanks a lot for having me on the show. Good luck, and y'all have a good week.
All right, James. Take care of yourself. Bye now.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right. All right. Well, that was James Spann from Birmingham, Alabama, ABC 3340. And get the studio cam back on here. Bill, what did you think of that?
That was fun.
Yeah, he's a stand-up guy.
That is, and you don't hear me say this a lot, that's probably one of the best interviews we've ever done.
Yeah, I like that cam shot he had there of his little studio shot. That's pretty cool. That camera with that microphone he had. That microphone's probably like $3,000 compared to this little wireless thing I'm hooking here. It's like $75. Hey, it came off without a hitch. What can I say? All right. Well, we're going to wrap it up here. Any final thoughts, Bill? Tonight you want to mention before I wrap the show up here?
We've got stay with Hurricane City. We've got a lot of interesting projects in the work. interesting projects in the works. Jim and I aren't getting a lot of sleep right now as we're testing this and testing that and trying new things. But stick with us this year. Hopefully, we're able to bring you a hurricane. Like, you know, we like to, you know, bring you the media, bring you right to the storm. But hopefully, we can do it in a way this year that we've never been able to do in years past. So stick with us and let's see what we can come up with.
All right. Yeah, and to touch on that again, I want to thank Chris from tropicalatlantic.com. He might even be listening tonight. I don't know, but he's building a script. And for those of you that may have missed the beginning of the show, I talked about a new tracking chart that's coming out for Hurricane City, a tracking chart that shows you the 5 best performing models. The models are all going to be color coded on the map, and you'll be able to click on them and see what the forecast projection are with these models. And they're going to be based on the last 24 hours of data. So the 5 best performers will be up on the map. We hope to have the cone of air and everything, but it's going to take a storm or two to work out the bugs on this. I mean, the last thing we want is to have somebody go to the Hurricane City and then see the cone of air aiming towards New York City when the cone is supposed to be going out to sea. So we want to make sure that it's working right before we release the new tracking chart. But thanks to Chris from tropicalatlantic.com, we're working on that through the GIS mapping. And if you want to take a little, I was reluctant to do this, but if you want to take a sneak peek at it, you can go to hurricanecity.com/index4.html, and that'll give you the GIS map that we're going to be using. And then the models will be embedded on top of that map. They'll be built into the program. And there'll be a legend and everything with the map, so you'll be able to see what you're looking at on the map. And again, we're working on this wireless surveillance, mobile surveillance for hurricane coverage. We're going to kind of do like what Mark Sutton's been doing. And let's face it, you know, Bill and I, we talked about this. It's really tough to get these storm chasers to give us information during these hurricanes. You know, they're out there busy. They don't want to be bothered. I understand that. Sometimes their cams are up on Ustream. Sometimes they're not. There's on again, off again, really tough. So this year we've decided let's try to get cameras in some of these zones and get our own footage here and try to get the really good shots with sound and everything. And this thing is so compact; it's only about this big. So it's really going to be fun to deploy this thing. And I might even be able to ship it if you're a reliable person that lives outside of the zone that we're thinking of. You know, maybe South Carolina, Georgia, Florida. The Panhandle, maybe over to Mobile, Alabama. Anything outside of that range, we're asking people if you're a reliable person, we could ship you this product. You could strap it on the beach somewhere and then go back and pick it up in the aftermath, and it'll all be recorded not only at Hurricane City but on an SD card that'll be inside the camera itself. So it'll record for 24 to 36 hours. So we might get some of the most unbelievable unseen footage ever seen with a camera like this in the right location. So let us know if you're interested in deploying a camera for us. There might be a couple technical things for you to do, but it won't be overwhelming. But we need to get the camera back. That's the most important thing. So if you're interested, email jim@hurricanecity.com. Let me know if you're interested in strapping one of these cameras up on the beach somewhere. But anyway, that's about it. It's currently 9:10 p.m. Eastern Time. This is archived for the archive subscribers. If you missed it, if you missed any portion of the show, use your username and password and go to the archive page. Go to the multimedia tab on the front page of Hurricane City. Use the drop-down menu and click on archives. And you can put your username and password for any video, including the one that we just showed you with James Spann covering the tornadoes from last year that killed a bunch of people in Alabama and Mississippi. And you can watch that along with all the other archive shows from years past. It's a real wealth of video in there to take a look at.
Any type of weather you want to see is up there in the archives. We've pretty much tried to do it all over the last, 12 years now.
Yeah, and those were the same videos that used to be at weatheraudio.net, which is no more. Weatheraudio.net is gone. They're all at Hurricane City now. You have to go to the multimedia tab, and all the videos are down there, and you can watch any one of them from the past. Also want to mention I may or may not be at the Florida Governor's Hurricane Conference on the 16th, 17th, and 18th, depending on my work schedule. If you're planning on going there, drop me an email. Let me know. Maybe we can meet somebody, some of the listeners out there, or people that have been using Hurricane City for years. I'd love to meet you. So Bill won't be going to the conference this year, but I'll be there alone. So anybody wants to meet me over there at the conference, if you're going, let me know. I'd love to meet you. And that's about it. So again, thanks to James Spann tonight. Great job, James. Keep up the great work, and please stay doing what you're doing. They need you badly up there. So that's about it, Bill. Thanks for coming on tonight. I'm glad you didn't have to do your medical stuff today. Maybe that's not good for you, but I know you always feel a little sick when you have those shots and everything, so I'm glad you didn't have to go through that.
Well, a little bit closer to your visit now. It's been rescheduled for the 16th of this month, so... but I'll be fine. Don't worry about it.
Oh, I'm glad you mentioned that, because one thing I forgot to mention, the kickoff show, coming up on June 1st. That's the next scheduled show. I have my city picks.
They're
right
done,
here.
ladies and gentlemen.
Right here, but you can't read them. Too small. I'm not going to reveal. But I've already made my city picks, and you're going to be surprised this year. Based on, I'm going about 10 to 12 named storms, actually 10.7 to be exact. And there's certain areas that get hit when there's slower hurricane seasons versus busy seasons, and you're going to be surprised. There's one state that I'm really, and it's not Florida. So I mean, Florida is, they're in, some of my picks are in Florida. I'm not saying that, but the state outside of Florida that you're going to be shocked this year is going to be, there's like 2 or 3 cities in that state that I have very high risk this year. So if you live in that, you want to tune in. I'm not going to tell you what state it is, but if you live in that state, boy, you better batten down the hatches this year. So tune in on June 1st. I'll be up in Bill's place in Virginia Beach. I'll be doing the show from Bill's. We'll have the camera here set up, and Bill's set up there in Virginia Beach, and we'll take your calls, and we'll do the show from Virginia Beach on June 1st. So tune in for that at 8 p.m. So without further ado, that's about it. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Appreciate the emails. Spread the word about the Weather and the Media show and Hurricane City and what we're doing here. And thanks again, and good night, everybody.
Good night, ladies and gentlemen.